summary. I've got to get my things. Izuku turns to walk away from Eraserhead and Present Mic at the gate. I'll find you afterward, don't worry. We'll come with you, listener. Mike is quick to say, sliding in front of Izuku on the sidewalk. Izuku stares at them for a long moment, then grins in a way that could almost be considered teasing if it wasn't so full of spite. Good luck with that, Izuku says, and it doesn't sound pleasant. Eraserhead's face immediately changes, and his quirk flares as his scarf goes to lash out, but it's too late because Isuku has taken off, moving far faster than he should be able to, and is already out of Eraserhead's sight. Fuck, Mike mutters to the both of them. Or, Isuku deserts his father's side in order to become a hero and save his brother. There's only two problems. He's a major asshole, and All Might hates his guts. Chapter 1. To Escape. Izuku doesn't make it more than 2 steps out of the bar before he's falling through one of Kurogiri's portals and landing at his father's feet. Years of ruthless training means he lands crouched on his hands and feet and is quick to fully spring up. Going somewhere? The voice of his father echoes in both his head and his ears as Izuku slowly stands, a glare fixed on the tower of shadows it comes from. Just out, Izuku says shortly, speaking like his dad's presence alone doesn't send fear skittering along his spine. You seem to be in such a hurry, though, his father says languidly, with the pace of a man who has time in his grasp, and in the middle of the night, no less. Isuku refuses to let himself show any sign of nervousness. His father will catch them in an instant. That's when the opportunities are ripe for the picking. His father chuckles emptily, and Izuku stiffens minutely before he can stop himself. And what is it exactly you need opportunities for, Izuku? I can give you access to anything in the world you desire, my son. Just because you can doesn't mean you will. Izuku can't help but respond with a hint of steel in his voice. His back straightens from where it had started to bend. His father sighs, and Izuku can almost feel the way it makes the tightrope he's walking on sway. Don't tell me you honestly still believe you could be a hero. Something tightens in Izuku's chest, but he doesn't so much as flinch. He stays silent, unwilling to give his father more ammo. Tell me, Izuku. There is a loud hissing sound, like pressurized air escaping a canister. What was your plan? The steady clack of dress shoes against cement begins to sound, and Isuku grits his teeth. His father walks into the light of the dim light bulb above him, and he looks every bit the villain he is. Well over 6 feet tall, Izuku's father towers over not only him, but almost everyone else he's ever met. He somehow makes his, no doubt expensive, pristine suit look at home with the suction cup that's attached to his mouth, with a tube trailing down into an oxygen canister somewhere. A mouth with pearly white teeth grins at him as his father's otherwise featureless face turns in his direction. The wrinkled mess of scars that makes up his bald head and eyeless face only adds to his demonic presence. Did you even have a plan? All for One asks Isuku condescendingly, and doesn't give Izuku a chance to respond before continuing, the grin slowly fading from his face the longer he speaks. Is my own flesh and blood really so stupid as to believe he can simply waltz out of our home as if I wouldn't notice? Pressing his lips together tightly, Izuku folds his hands into fists to keep them from shaking. The malevolent aura that his father had been suppressing starts to leak back into the atmosphere, choking him slowly as fear tends to. I have a plan, Izuku says in a whisper, fighting to speak the way his throat is closing up. And so far it's going perfectly. If All for One had eyebrows, he would be raising one. Is that so? Izuku takes a step closer to his father, even though the animal part of his brain is screaming at him to run. It doesn't make sense to keep me here, and you know it. Oh, All for One says, and his tone grates on Izuku's ears like hot coals as his anger at his son's audacity seeps into the air. I'm too smart to be left to my own devices, Izuku dares. At this point, it makes more sense to kill me than it does to keep me here. All for One opens his mouth, and Izuku adds a last statement before he can speak. Whispering in Tomora's ear. A touch of intrigue colors All for One, and Izuku crushes the urge to sigh in relief. So that's the angle you're going to take, All for One muses out loud. That is rather clever, Izuku. Before Isuku can feel so much as a sprinkle of relief, his father adds, So tell me why I shouldn't just kill you right here and be done with it. This time, Izuku can't stop himself from swallowing. He forces down his nerves, however. Because I have a proposition for you. You do you? Now his father is amused, and Izuku isn't sure if that's better or worse. You let me go now, without resistance, Izuku says, and to be a hero goes unspoken. But if I fail, I will return and comply with all future orders. Izuku inhales, drawing strength from the part of him that is just like his father. Give me one chance to try, and if I am wrong, I will drop this once and for all. The weight of his father's non-existent gaze falls on Izuku. He can feel his dad searching for a crack in the armor, for the slightest give in his resolve, and he finds none. Truly you are your mother's son, All for One says, and Izuku doesn't know if it's a compliment. He's never met his mother, he doesn't even know what she looked like. All for One had spoken of her only a handful of times, and from them Izuku has gathered that although he truly loved her, he hated himself for doing so, and well, you can guess what happened after that. I accept your terms, Izuku, All for One says, and he holds out a hand. Izuku knows what quirk it's for, and so he clenches his jaw as he approaches his father and grabs his hand without hesitation, ready for the pain he knows is about to come. The feeling of electricity runs through the point of contact, and Izuku's knees nearly buckle, but he manages to lock them in place through a habit made through years of brutal training. He refuses to scream in pain, even though it feels like his muscles are melting in his arms. Finally, his father lets go of his arm, and it takes everything in Izuku not to collapse to the ground. He manages to hold himself together as he sees Kurogiri appear near him. I will be waiting, son. All for One's voice follows Izuku, echoing in his mind, not his ears, as he finally turns around to walk away through another portal. He doesn't look behind him, because he is more than aware that his father will know. His father sniffs out weaknesses like a rat searches for food, and he's quick to catch even the slightest whiff. This chance is more than Izuku ever thought he'd be given, and it may be a trick, maybe a trap, but he can't find it within himself to care. Not when freedom is the closest it's ever been. Kurogiri takes him to the alleyway he tried to first leave through. Izuku leaves one of his hands in the portal long enough to lean close and whisper, "Goodbye, Giri," to it. Then he exits it completely, the portal shutting down almost immediately afterwards. Izuku walks off into the dark, refusing to think of how, in the morning, Tomura will find the lengthy note he'd written him, and he refuses to think about the steps ahead of him, the trials he has yet to face. No. Right now, Izuku is free, or as free as he's ever been, and that's what matters.